In these modules, we'll be talking about sexual assault. We're going to break these up into a couple smaller videos so that it'll be easier, because I know that this stuff is especially really hard to talk about. So our first module, we'll be talking all about what is sexual assault. So sexual assault has a two-part definition. It's important that you realize that you don't need to have everything on this slide for it to be considered sexual assault. So the first part of that definition is any unwanted touching to a private area, which includes the breast, butt, or genitals. The second part of that definition is what people normally call rape, and that's any unwanted penetration. It's important that we recognize that that unwanted penetration could happen orally, anally, vaginally, or with an object. When we talk about this in person in classrooms, this is normally where I see students fidgeting or giggling because they're like, oh my gosh, this lady is talking about different types of penetration in our class. The reason that it is so important to actually say, though, that this unwanted penetration can happen orally, anally, vaginally, or with an object is because I've worked with several sexual assault survivors who did not realize what happened to them was sexual assault because no one ever told them that oral penetration is considered sexual assault. So this is so that we're all on the same page that any unwanted touching to a private area or any unwanted penetration, whether it happens orally, anally, vaginally, or with an object, all of that is considered sexual assault. All of that is against the law, and it's not your fault if something like this happens to you. So remember from our very first module that sexual assault is all about power and control. It is not about sex. One of the things we hear a lot is that sexual assault happens because somebody got carried away. They were just so attracted to someone else that they lost control of their body and just had to have sex with them. And that is not a reality. Sexual assault is done on purpose, and it's about taking power and control away from that survivor or victim. Okay? So just so that we understand the prevalence of sexual assault, there's a statistic on the screen that every 73 seconds, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted. This translates to about 1 in 4 women being sexually assaulted throughout their lifetime, and 1 in 6 boys being sexually assaulted before the age of 18. So these are really startling statistics. Sexual assault is happening, it's extremely prevalent, it's happening way too often to folks, which is why later on we'll talk more about how to intervene if you see something going on and how to support folks in your life who may have experienced something like this. One of the things that's most frustrating to me, though, when I'm talking about sexual assault in particular, is that there are a ton of myths and misconceptions about sexual assault in our society. So we're going to go through some statements, and in your head I want you to be thinking about if you think this is myth or fact. If we were in person, I'd be making you explain why and what different things you've heard, but of course we have to modify it slightly. So the first one is, is that sexual assault is most often committed by strangers. So this one is a myth. This is not true. Most of the time, sexual assault is committed by someone that victim or survivor knows and trusts. About 85% of the time, someone is sexually assaulted by an acquaintance or somebody that they know. On average, they've known that person for at least about a year. So a lot of times we're taught growing up that, stranger danger, or watch out for the person in the white van who's offering free candy or saying they're looking for their lost puppy, right? We're taught that strangers are going to be the people that hurt us. But in reality, when it comes to sexual assault, that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, stranger sexual assault does happen, but most of the time when somebody is sexually assaulted, it's by someone that they know and someone that they trust. Okay? The second statement is that people lie about being sexually assaulted all the time. This one is also a myth or false. We talked about this earlier on in the reporting modules, but most of the time if someone says that they have been sexually assaulted, they are telling the truth. The FBI statistics indicate that about 2 to 8% of the time it's a false report, which means it was made up. And that's the same false report rate as any other violent crime. So false reports do happen, but they're really uncommon. Okay? Most of the time when someone says they were sexually assaulted, they're usually telling the truth. Next one, many survivors of sexual assault experience tonic immobility. So this one is a fact. And tonic immobility is also sometimes called rape-induced paralysis. And what this means is someone is frozen in fear. They can feel everything that's happening to their body, but they can't move their legs to run away. They can't move their mouth to scream or call for help. They are literally just frozen in fear. And a lot of studies are indicating that over 70% of sexual assault survivors experience this tonic immobility and will freeze when something bad like sexual assault is happening to them. The next one is that only women can be sexually assaulted. This one is also a myth. Sexual assault can happen to anyone. You'll remember from our definition slides that it never once mentioned someone's gender identity, sexual orientation. It has nothing to do with that. Sexual assault can happen to and be perpetrated by anyone of any gender identity or sexual orientation. The last one is that wearing revealing clothing, behaving provocatively, or drinking a lot means that someone is asking for it. This one is also a myth. So the idea that someone is asking for it, no one is ever asking for or wants to be sexually assaulted. So with this one, a lot of times I'll talk about the difference between judgment versus responsibility. And ignore my horrible writing on this screen. It's hard to write with a mouse. So, is it great judgment to be blackout drunk and to walk down Dixie Avenue naked? Probably not the best judgment, right? That's probably not the best idea. It's probably not the safest idea. However, it's not your responsibility if someone sees you in that vulnerable state and chooses to break the law and sexually assault you. So that's where I see this one a lot, is people not understanding the difference between judgment and responsibility. Sexual assault victims and survivors are never responsible for what has happened to them. You are not responsible for someone else choosing to break the law and to hurt you.